everyone, and welcome to another Transfer Request show. This is a show where we hand over the keys to you to decide who it is that we're going to talk about. Now, obviously, there's kind of a bit of a radio silence going on when it comes to Liverpool transfers at the moment. So you've had to use all of your creative juices to find some of the people we hope are under consideration. Joining me today, I've got Josh Sexton and Mr. Craig Hannan. And for those of you who are unsure of the difference of this format, we're going to have three different sections we're going to be talking about. We're going to start with defence, then we're going to move on to midfield and attack. And for each of those sections, there were three players who we were deciding between. So we'll start with the defence. You had the option of Ruben Diaz, Ricardo Pereira, or Ryan Sessegnon. And 2,000 people voted in the 3 hours that this has been out, and 63% of them wanted us to talk about Ryan Sessegnon. So Josh, let's talk about Ryan Sessegnon. He was someone who came into the Premier League last year with a lot of fanfare, managed to get onto the PFA Young Player of the Year award from the Championship, which is pretty much unheard of. Maybe didn't have the kind of season people were expecting, but then you say the same about the whole Fulham side. How would you assess how he progressed over the course of his season?
I think he's still very young, isn't he? And he's obviously quite raw. I think that was clear from his season with Fulham in the Championship. You know, he was capable of great things, great skills, very quick as well. But you know, he struggled in the Premier League a bit. We all know that. He probably struggled with the physicality of it. He's obviously very slight, very lightweight. That's something you know that you could work on. And I've said it loads on these kind of shows that Liverpool is the perfect place for these kind of players to progress. Both, you know, in terms of personality, in terms of maturity, but also in terms of physicality. We've seen lads who've come into Liverpool and have probably been quite slight in the past and have bulked up. You know, think of Joel Matip, looking at him recently, Trent Alexander-Arnold as well. Lads who've been able to put a bit of you know muscle on. Divock Origi I'd put in that category as well. So I think if Sessegnon was to come to Liverpool, then all the things that I'd be worried about from what I saw last season wouldn't be such a worry for me anymore, I don't think.
That's an interesting point. We all like to think of guys developing as they join us, Craig, and he's got so much time ahead of him. We really don't know what he's going to develop into. I mean, there was a bit of debate when we were doing this as to whether he really counts as a defender, but technically he did play more games at left back than further forward for Fulham last season. But Klopp's looking for adaptable players, so maybe that will bring him into his radar, the fact that he can play all along the left side.
Yeah, and how many players have we seen of his ilk who have come through and started almost as a gateway position, whether it's left back, right back. You look at Gerrard when he comes through with us, you look at players like Gareth Bale at Southampton and Spurs coming through. Ryan Sessegnon's a funny one because I almost feel as if for the next step he either makes, it has to be to a side of our sort of stature, maybe even Tottenham, or stay at Fulham and play a season in the Championship. I almost feel like it's the in between that won't really work for him. I think we saw that last. Look, it was a difficult season for the whole of Fulham, and I know he plays 35 times in that. But I almost feel like either he should go to a team like Liverpool and learn from the quality of players that are there, or stay at Fulham for another season, you know, smash it in the Championship again, and then get his move. I like him as a player, though. I really like him, and like you say, like 19 years old, it's to win the PFA Young Player of the Year at 18, and then have that pressure of not only the pressure of trying to stay up in the Championship, in the Premier League. I think Fulham got their game plan all wrong. They rather than trying to stay up like they should have, they tried to aim for top 10 or whatever. And so I don't think that helped them at all. But he's a quality player, and I think you can see that shining through, and you could see that at stages last season. I'm interested to see what's next move. Look, I'd love him to join Liverpool, and like you say, Jurgen Klopp wants adaptable players. He wants players that can play in lots of different positions, and he can sort of look at and go, right, this is your best position. I'll mould you there, but if I need you further forward, I think it'd be great on the left-hand side for the Reds.
I think he'd be fantastic on the left-hand side. I think as well, when you look at his valuation, currently Spurs are the front runners, and there's been talk of around the 25 million mark will get it done. Now, we've heard a lot, of course, Liverpool aren't looking to spend big money, particularly on people who are going to be maybe backups. But when you've got someone like him who, like I say, is so adaptable, is surely going to get more minutes than just a generic backup left back would. So 25 million is probably the ballpark we're going to be looking for that position anyway.
Yeah, and I think we've got a bit of an advantage over Spurs in terms of, I think our shape's a bit more adaptable. I think Sessegnon, there's a number of positions he can probably fit into in Liverpool's formation. But also, you know, we've lost Alberto Moreno this summer. Spurs have still got both Danny Rose and Ben Davies, who are their left-back options there. Probably, you know, a few players who can play on the left-hand side of the forwards for Spurs if they were looking at someone who maybe can do that position as well. Whereas we've, you know, only really got Mane in, and there's a few who can sort of adapt to play in there, but no one who it's so natural to as it is to Ryan Sessegnon. So I think in terms of, you know, who could be the front runners for Sessegnon, Liverpool almost have the advantage in that sense. Whether, you know, him living in London, being born in London comes into it, maybe that kind of thing would be something we'd have to wait and see. But, you know, what we talk about on his position there is he's someone who we've seen Robertson loads this season arrive late into the box, have shots across the box. Yep. That was how he scored the majority of his goals in the Championship, and he had a fantastic goal return as well. So for someone who was mostly playing as a left back, so he's someone who really intrigues me. He's someone who I'd like to see, you know, play under Jurgen Klopp, play in Liverpool's formation, and be able to get that chance. And, you know, hopefully it could happen this summer.
Okay, it's time for the Mo scale. Now, you may have noticed I've actually grown the beard back, so it actually looks a little bit more like me this time. So, Josh, on the likelihood of Liverpool doing this deal, what are you giving out of 5?
I feel like I'm slightly middle ground on this. I'll lean towards a more optimistic side though and go 3 Mo's out of 5.
See, I like a bit of optimism. That's how we should start the show, definitely. Craig, you're always an optimistic guy. You're going to give me some good stuff too.
I'm going to go 3 as well, and I think he ticks loads of boxes. And I think for 25 million, like his ceiling's up here, and I think that would be almost a steal. And I think I just feel like there's with these sorts of transfers, when a team is mentioned so much around a player's name, like Spurs have been over the past sort of year, so it almost feels as if they've just been talking to him for longer, and that they might be able to do the deal. But I'd go 3 out of 5 Mo's.
See, I like that. You've got a little bit of realism in with the optimism. I'm going to follow you both, and I'm going to say 3. I think Spurs may well be in pole position now, but it wouldn't be the first time we've come out of nowhere and taken a play. Just because we haven't heard any links with him doesn't mean we're not in for him. So 3 Mo's from all 3 of us. We'll have to wait and see about Ryan Sessegnon. Okay, it's time for the midfield options now. Now, this was actually a little bit harder to pick for me because a lot of you were trying to sneak forwards in as midfielders. That's not how this game's played, guys. So, actual midfielders here, we have 3 choices. Dwight McNeil, 10% of the vote. I think he's a good player. Maybe we're hearing about him again in the future. Jeffrey Kondogbia, another adaptable player, got 19%, but the massive favourite out of this, someone who almost got onto the last transfer request show, is attacking midfielder for Bayer Leverkusen, Kai Havertz, who got 71% of the vote. Now, I've seen a lot of this kid over the last 2 years, and he excites the hell out of me. I know that we've spoken about a lot of Leverkusen players over the years, mainly Bailey and Brandt, but I think if you're thinking about what we as a team don't have at the moment and what he can grow into, he's the most exciting one for me, Josh.
Yeah, I've not seen a lot of this kid, to be honest, but the noise coming out of Germany are that, you know, he's obviously a massive talent. Leverkusen seem to be producing these great talents as well, and I think one of the key things that stands out to me from what you've talked about and the noise that you do hear from Germany is that he's so adaptable as a midfield player, and I think that's something that Klopp's always going to be looking for is not just a midfielder who can play one position. He's going to be looking for someone who can, you know, cover full-back positions, cover forward positions, but also cover, you know, every position, every number, you know, 6, 8, 10 in midfield, and he seems like a kid who can do it. I'm actually a bit disappointed it's not Dwight McNeil in this. I know he's lost the votes heavily, but he was one of the best performers I've seen at Anfield last season, so I wanted it to be him, but I think I could settle for a Kai Havertz. Just sign someone.
You're not picky at this
No,
stage.
not at all.
Well, I think Jurgen Klopp still is picky, but I think that this is the kind of guy who he will be picking, Craig, because again, we've spoken a lot about the fact we have got a lot of midfield options at the moment, but what we don't have a lot of guys who can unlock can unlock defences when they're packed, can play good through balls both short and long, and when you consider the speed that we've got in our front 3, this is just the kind of guy we need to get more of onto our pitches.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if Liverpool aren't in the conversation for this player, because he's the kind of one that even at the age he is, I think he's 19, like 19, 20, even at the age he is, it's the proper like, oh my God, what a signing. And it's funny when you watch him because he's more slight than what. In the way that he plays, he's more slight than what you'd think of a goal-scoring midfielder. Because when I think of a goal-scoring midfielder, I think of the Gerrards, I think of the Lampards, I think of sort of that kind of player 10 years ago that have almost a little bit grown out of fashion now. But he seems to be that with the amount of goals he scored and the way he gets forward. When I put his name in the stats bomb, the player that came up as most like him was Philippe Coutinho, which surprised me a little bit, but also interesting. I think Jurgen Klopp will have had lads watching him since he came to Liverpool, and if there is the opportunity for him to sign him, Liverpool will be in that conversation. My only worry with him really is that he's obviously, I think he scored 7 in his last 7 at the end of the season there, which helped Bayer Leverkusen get into the Champions League. Now if Bayer Leverkusen in the Champions League next year and he's playing as well as what he has last season, and that could almost sort of propel him to the next level, then it becomes a different situation, it becomes a different price tag, and it becomes, a Real Madrid looking at him, or a Barcelona looking at him, and that might become more difficult. So I'm not saying it's this summer or nothing. I just think that there's a possibility that we see him propel himself to a different level, and that's just how much potential this player has.
It's true. He makes a good point there, Josh. The fact that obviously Leverkusen have also they've had to sell Julian Brandt already this summer. Makes you think that they're going to be more reluctant to let him go as well this year. So when you're thinking about the potential price, I mean, we've seen him have a market value in the 60 to 65 million euros mark, which, again, if you believe most reports, aren't the kind of purchases we're going to be making this summer.
Yeah, and I think we're in a sort of strange market now, almost, aren't we? This window's been representative of that, is that everyone's sort of holding off to see what kind of value they can get for their own players. Everyone who's the buying club is holding off to see how much that value drops over the course of the transfer window. And obviously with it closing earlier as well, it's all made for a sort of a weird cocktail where everyone just seems to be waiting around and no one really making a move. But if Klopp has been watching this player for a while and values him with that much money, and I think we can be pretty sure that Liverpool have that money, then yeah, I can't see any reason why he wouldn't want to go for him.
He's a very exciting player. He ticks a lot of great boxes. I mean, if you watch him on YouTube, as I'm sure most people after this video will do, one of the things that really struck me is not just the quality, not just the quantity of goals, but the quality, the difference. He's 6'2", he's good in the air, he can arrive in the box, he can drift out wide and create. But, as we've all said, it may well be that this is not one for us this summer. I'm going to start on the Mo scale on this one. And unfortunately, despite how much I love him, I just think it's not going to happen this year. So I'm going to go 1.5 Mo's. Craig, what are you saying?
That's not the kind of news I wanted to hear, to be honest.
I've got to be a realist on this one, I'm sorry.
I'm going to go 3 just for the simple fact that maybe I don't just mean it this summer, maybe I mean a summer down the line where he does do well in the Champions League and then Liverpool go in for him. I think that there's just... I'd be baffled if Jurgen Klopp doesn't have this player somewhere at the top of his list, whether it's for this year or next. So I'm going to go 3, a hopeful, wishful 3.
Okay.
I'm going to meet you both somewhere in the middle and go for a 2 Mo's, I think. Well, you're gonna end up with 3 threes here if you carry on. So you're well middle of the road.
I'm gonna go sick on the last one.
Mate, it's better than Mr. 1 Mo Dan Austin anyway. I think he's yet to do above 1 for anything.
Huge transfers.
Yeah. So yeah, you're sound with your 3 average, mate. Don't worry about it. Okay, so time for the forwards now. Now, again, there were 3 choices. We seem to have gone a little bit Juve heavy this week. I'm not sure if that was entirely intentional. 3rd place went to Moise Kean, another guy who I think we will be talking about in the future, with 15%. Only 30% I thought was going to be a shoo-in personally for Everton, just because, come on.
Don't want to sign them, they're rubbish.
How much fun would it have been to have to spend all this time talking
Who's
about...
voting? Why hasn't no one voted for Everton? I've never heard of the fella. Is he real?
Oh, he's real.
Imagine we had a lad called Everton.
I know, and the funniest thing is that at the moment Everton is keeping Richarlison out of the Brazilian team, which is just fantastic. But the winner, with 56% of the vote, someone who has been mentioned in dispatches as a Liverpool player or a Liverpool target in the past, Paulo Dybala of Juventus. Now, there's been a lot of talk about him potentially leaving, them potentially seeing him as expendable as they go and chase other people. He's someone who can play as an attacking midfielder, but has also played as a second striker and even as a number 9, Craig. again, he's another guy who's got large amounts of quality in adaptable positions. He should be on our radar too, right?
Definitely. I'm not someone who watches a lot of Italian football, but I watched the Netflix documentary that followed Juve for a season, and right from the very start I was like, who is this fella? Because first of all, he's got all of the things that, like, as a kid you want from a transfer. He's got a cool name, he's Argentinian, he's got a cool celebration, and he scores great free kicks. And then whenever I sort of watch more of him, you see he scores all kinds of goals, and he just looks so deadly. He would be a go-to town signing, I think, and I think I agree with you in that I think maybe Juve are trying to not actively get rid of him, but there's been sort of rumours and little stories here and there about him being expendable, and obviously they've brought in a few new players on frees, but then on big wages. It'd be interesting to see who they sign next, because that might tell you where Dybala stands. But I would love him, and I think he would suit Liverpool to the ground. And again, I did a stats bomb on him. Coutinho, again, just out of Premier League players and Champions League players, Coutinho was the one that, well, now that surprised me a little bit more, to be honest. But yeah, I'm all in for Paulo Dybala.
What are you saying, Josh? Are you all in as well?
It feels like an almost very Liverpool signing at this stage, doesn't it? And if you look at Liverpool in the last few, season or two as well, lost Philip Coutinho, lost Dominic Solanke, lost Danny Ings, now lost Daniel Sturridge as well. It feels like we've lost a lot of players in them four positions and not really replace them. And Paulo Dybala is someone who could play all across that front three. He can probably even drop back into that midfield and sort of play the 10 role. So again, in terms of that versatility that Jurgen Klopp looks for, he feels like he's almost built perfectly in that mould for him. My one worry would be the sort of wages that he comes with. I'm not sure if he signed a new contract to Juventus. I think he did he? Sort of halfway through his time.
He has signed 2 contracts in his time.
So I imagine he'll be like pushing towards the higher wages now. Maybe you could argue he's worth it. If he comes into Liverpool, I don't know if there'd be a bit of dressing room unrest if he comes in and starts getting the big bucks straight away. But he is someone who fits. Craig said before, ticks all the boxes that Liverpool are after. So he's someone who you definitely get excited about if he was to arrive at Anfield.
He feels like when you look at his stats, he feels like the kind of player that Jurgen Klopp could turn from a Roma Mo Salah to a Liverpool 2 seasons later Mo Salah, or a Southampton Sadio Mane and I know there's he's probably at a higher level than Sadio Mane was when he signed, and he's maybe you could say sort of similar to when Salah signed, but it feels like if Jurgen Klopp got his hands on this player, he could turn him into a proper top bracket world star. And I think he's about 1 and 2.2, and most of his games played in that sort of secondary role. So I think he'd fit the bill perfectly. And imagine a front three of Sadio Mane, Salah, Firmino, and then having Dybala in the conversation as to who are we playing every week, because God, I'd love that selection problem. Imagine that for a debate every week.
And it's interesting, we talk about the idea of the big signing and the fact that and the wage structure and all those things. These are things that as a big club we are going to come into eventually. We are going to get to a point where we're signing someone who's going to want wages that puts him above most of our current squad. This is a big club problem that we are eventually going to have to deal with. And if you look at how we've approached transfers, sometimes it could be just an opportunity. Like we said about Juventus maybe putting him out there, the circumstances might just marry up perfectly. I'm going to ask you to most scale this one now, Josh.
I feel like Craig is going to stick to his promise on the last one and go sick, but this is one which I'm not sure I could see happening, to be honest. It feels like, we've seen David Maddock tweeting and writing stories about Liverpool and looking in the sort of 20 million mark for a move this summer. Ryan Sessegnon, as we've discussed in the show, I think fits, as a few other players at Liverpool have been linked with who fit that. I just feel like Paulo Dybala is a bit too much of a stretch for Liverpool at this stage, so I'll go with 1.5 mils.
Ooh, 1.5. Okay, well, I'm going to leave Craig as the fantastic finale and see if he does.
Gonna have to go sick here.
You are kind of going to have to go sick here, mate. I kind of agree with you, Josh. I just think that in terms of where we are looking this season, it's hard to say that it's going to be a likely scenario. He is, again, the kind of person we should be looking at and probably have been looking at. It might need a real opportunity for Juventus to maybe really drop the price, maybe him to be a little bit unrest, maybe him to come out and tell us how much he wants to play for Liverpool. So for that reason, I'm putting it at 2 Mo's out of 5. Come on, Paolo. We know you love us. Show it. Craig?
Liverpool are European champions, and if Liverpool are going to sign players acting like European champions, they're going to have to impact their wage bill. There's going to have to be these, and all the other big clubs around the world are dealing with this. So when people talk about this, I don't understand it. If you're Virgil van Dijk or you're Salah, and you're the sort of the top 2 paid players, and we signed Dybala, you're thinking, well, I've got an even better chance of winning the Premier League next season or win the Champions League again. And yet he's on same wage as me, and he's not done anything at Liverpool yet. But that's just the nature of signing big players. Yep. I am going to go sick, just because I've said I had, so I'm going to go 4. And I think there's just something tells me this summer that Liverpool are keeping their cards to their chest, that the journalists don't really know what's going on, and it just seems like they're not going to be busy. And I think that Liverpool are sort of, just standing in the background waiting to see what happens. There's going to be these massive transfers around Europe. There's going to be the Neymars, the Coutinhos and so on. And something tells me there's just going to be a little surprise up someone's sleeve, and I hope it's going to be Liverpool's.
So Craig's predicting we're going to be pulling a black and white rabbit out of the hat over the course of this summer transfer window. Josh and I are probably a little bit more realistic, but thank you to both of you guys for coming onto the show. Thank you for giving us some good options this week. Keep it up. There will be another transfer request show coming next week.